Alright, if y'all will stick around to the end of the video, we got a couple of things to talk about. But this weekend, we got a couple of short form videos to make. I guess today's video will be about weed eater attachments. I used to really hate using weed eaters back years ago. They'd always leave me hurting or whatever. And it was always aggravating. Putting string on the head, you know, that gets old quick. But I found a few attachments that make this a whole lot more bearable, I guess you'd say. I don't know that I'd ever call weed eating enjoyable, but sometimes satisfying. But now all these attachments I'm using on a Stihl Fs80R. Dad dug it out of the dump a while back, and I put a carburetor and a fuel tank on it. She's been rocking ever since. I guess we'll start off with this fancy handle we got going on here. I actually seen them pop up probably a couple of months ago. I had never seen one before, but they seem to be making a craze on the internet. Now before, I used to hate using straight shaft weed eaters because I'm a little over 6 foot, and it ends up making you lean forward to weed eat, and after a little bit my back and shoulder will be hurting bad. So I always just stayed away from them unless I was doing some heavy brush or something that the little weed eater didn't have the power to do. But I always used to use just a old homeowner grade curved shaft weed eater because it was the most comfortable. Now I've tried time and time again on several weed eaters to adjust your handle spacing or what have you. I've even used a few of these different slings to put on your shoulder. Those help a lot. But like I said, at a little over 6 foot tall, still just don't help a whole lot. You still end up having to lean over with the strap, so it doesn't do a whole lot of good. But this handle raises it up about 6 inches, depending on where you put it. You know, you can adjust it to however it suits you best. But that has helped out a lot. My yard actually gets weed eated more often now. Alright, so with the factory handle, if I'm holding it comfortable, you know, I'm about 8-10 inches off the ground there. So I end up having to lean over a pretty good bit to weed eat around something. Now I've taken all this off and adjusted it, but then your handles is too close together right there, so you know, very uncomfortable. Just that little bit puts the head right on the ground. That helps a lot, especially if you got back trouble or shoulder issues. Now you almost don't even need the sling anymore with this handle, but the sling's still nice to have on it because you can just kind of let it hang and bend over and pick up a piece of trash or something. So it's still pretty nice. But this handle is pretty easy to mount. You know, it's just got 2 Allens and it clamps around your shaft with a piece of rubber in it, so nothing too fancy. Next up, we have a Speedfeed head. Now I used to use the factory Stihl heads, and I think Echo and a bunch of other companies have actually started putting these on their weed eater stock. But this is an actual Echo branded Speedfeed. This is the 500 model. I think it's rated to hold like almost 40 foot of string, which is ridiculous. I believe this one cost about 40 bucks, worth every cent. It cuts out so much time and aggravation with trying to feed like them factory Stihl heads. I don't even know why they make them anymore, to be honest with you. Now they come with several different adapters to make this fit many weed eaters, so, but it's not too bad. It comes with a chart with which ones go on which weed eater. Now we got about 32 foot of string here. How would you like to feed that into a Stihl head, you know? You'd have to have a couple of even cut pieces. That's not fun to start with, but then you gotta feed 2 even cut pieces on the head without unspooling the other side. So, but all you do is line up the hole all the way straight through, You feed it through till it comes out the other side. You just feed it through the head and then pull both ends out evenly. That's 16 foot worth of string on each side. Just lay it down. Now all you do is grab your string like that and hold the bottom of the head and then just turn it backwards until it feeds all the string onto the head. Some people can do this a lot faster than I can. Of course, it is weed eater string, so it'll still get tangled. Didn't get it perfectly even, but there you go. In about 20-30 seconds, got 32 foot of string on a head. Easy as it gets. Now it bump feeds just like a regular head, but way easier. With the old Stihl heads, I'd be out there beating it on the concrete because I was so mad because it wouldn't feed the string and I'd break the string off. So now it still will break the string off just like a regular head, of course, but it's pretty easy to take apart. You just push one side and push this other tab in and it comes off. And then you can, worst comes to worst, you can just pull all the string off the head and feed it back through and rewind it. Really easy to do. Now, a lot of your more professional guys don't use the guard on their weed eater, and I don't either. Not necessarily because I'm a professional or nothing, but I much prefer it without the guard on it hitting everything. But one nice thing about it is, like say I bump the head and feed out too much string. You know, normally your guard cuts it all, but with this head here, you know, you feed out too much string, you just pick the weed eater up and turn the head and feed it back on the reel. That's very nice. Really handy and easy to do. Now for string, I usually use this Oregon 095. I haven't actually bought the bigger string yet, but it's square cut. It's pretty nice string. It says made in USA on it. I've had pretty good luck with this string, even in some smaller weed eaters. If y'all got any better recommendations, let me know. That's probably gonna be hard to beat. Now this is a Speedfeed 500. You're gonna have to pick what size for your weed eater, because this is a pretty good size head, even for this weed eater. But you know, don't go putting this on a curve shaft weed eater unless you buy one of the smaller ones. I bought one of the smaller ones for my curve shaft, and it still robs a lot of power off of that weed eater. Now I don't have a factory head to show how to take it off, but they're usually pretty simple. On these Stihls, on a bunch of them, you got a hole right here that you can poke. I've used a wood screw most of the time, but we got a random size Allen key that fits in the hole. So just poke it in there and hold it. And there's gonna be some grooves in there that it'll fall in. So it locks it where you can screw this head off of the shaft. But you gotta remember, these heads are, at least on the Stihl, these heads are left-hand thread. So it's righty-loosey and lefty-tighty. They ain't got to be on there super tight. That's why they're left-hand thread. And that's all it takes. Nothing too bad. This particular Stihl has this piece that stays on. But you can see your hole comes out right there. And it lines up with these grooves in the head. Pretty easy to take off. And that's got splines in it for the shaft on the weed eater. Then you can see in there where the adapter is, and then this spacer you don't need for all weed eaters. It'll be a chart in the kit for that. Now since we got that off, it's a good time to show you my next favorite. This is actually AR Pro brand off of Amazon. I don't know who all makes them, but I wish I had known about this years ago. Would have saved so much time weed eating ditches. The grass would get too tall in them working for a city, and I've spent so much time feeding string on weed eater. Now this is double-sided, so you can actually flip it over and use the other side once you wear one side out. But I've cut a bunch of grass in it, and I've only sharpened it one time. They wear better than lawnmower blades do, to be honest with you. But it's not super sharp, but that's at the speeds this is gonna turn it. Slices right through grass and a lot of brush. Now I probably wouldn't cut over like 1, maybe 2 inch thick brush with this, because at that point you're putting a lot of strain on your weed eater shaft, the gearbox. Your actual brush cutter weed eaters have a solid shaft in them, I believe, and these have like a really long spring to help cut down on vibrations. Now most of the time you'll easily break this gearbox with something like this if you hit something too big. Generally I go by the rule of thumb, if you can cut it with a machete in 1, maybe 2 hits, perfect size stuff for this. This doesn't replace your saw teeth blades, but I don't even own a saw teeth blade since I bought this. If I'm gonna be cutting bigger than what this will cut, we're gonna do it on a tractor or use a chainsaw, one of the two. But you ain't gonna be weed eating around your house or vehicles or nothing you care about, because this will slice right through it. And you have to be careful with this. It'd probably be better to have the guard on it, because if you mess around and trip and fall and hit yourself with that, that would be a bad day. String you can handle, but that'll cut right through you. But it's pretty easy to mount. You got a little shoulder on this disc here. Of course, probably depends on the brand of weed eater. But if you're gonna buy one of these, I think this disc was about $16 or so. You're gonna have to have the adapters. Usually a brush cutter weed eater comes with them, but now in your adapter kit you usually get an extra one of these. You'll get this thick washer that's also spline. Then you'll get this, I'm gonna call it a cone. It keeps your shaft on your head protected, the threads on it. And you get a new nut that is left hand. But to put it on, you just fit this on that shoulder to keep it centered. This washer, which keeps it tight. Shaft protector. And then the lefty tighty. Now this can be kind of aggravating to do sometimes, but you have to hold all that on there or it'll fall off the shoulder. Put your Allen key in there and line it up with the groove. And then you just tighten this up. You don't have to tighten that up crazy. It pretty much holds its own pretty good. Don't strip your shaft out, you know. That blade don't take a whole lot of torque to hold. That first washer we put on is what actually kind of keeps it tight, keeps kind of a spring pressure on it. But if you don't get it tight enough, you can just snug it up a little bit more, because it'll just slip if you hit stuff too big, which that might be kind of wise to leave it on the loose side. But now you should always be wearing safety glasses with a weed eater, but especially with this. You hit sticks or rocks, it likes to sling them. But I don't use my weed eater without ear protection or safety glasses anymore. My hearing is taking a hit from mowing grass. Now this blade here is the perfect homesteading setup, because you can clean out fence rows really good with this. You can cut trails through a wooded area or through a thick pasture. You just gotta steer clear of your fence post a little bit, and then come back with your weed eater head and get real close to the fence post. Now for a gas can, I've just got a 1 gallon can, so I can mix 1 gallon with the amount of oil I need for 50 to 1. And this push button, usually I hate push button stuff for gas cans, but this is really nice for filling up weed eaters or saws. If I didn't use a weed eater or a chainsaw very much, I would definitely use the premixed gas. I've used a bunch of True Fuel, but I just used too much of it to justify it, so we mix gas at a gallon at the time. I don't use enough of it to mix more than a gallon. These fence rows is where this shines. Now I was hitting iron ore rocks in there, in case you were wondering. I only hit the fence once or twice. Now this kind of stuff we could hit with the regular weed eater string, but it's like these old briars. They kind of not fun to do with weed eater string because they get all jumbled and tangled up. But I cleared this last year with that blade. Let's go see what it was like before. Now here's a little bit bigger stuff we had on the fence row before. Kind of brush it's perfect for on a fence row. I think one piece of it was a little closer to an inch. I stalled it a couple of times, but here's one of the bigger pieces I cut through. So we had this big chinaberry bush right here. It wouldn't be very fun cutting that with a chainsaw. You'd be throwing a chain clearing fence rows with that. Now obviously it still doesn't replace a chainsaw. You let it get away from you. I got a trick up my sleeve for that later on though. Now obviously a piece or two of that on that fence row was a little bit big for it, but you can cut down some pretty impressive stuff with it. As long as you don't mind buying Amazon gearboxes every once in a while. But I haven't blowed that one up yet, so pretty happy with it. I'm gonna throw in a clip right here about where I cut my dad's front ditch at his house. And this is where this thing shines. Grass way too tall to be doing with a weed eater. It's so tall it even gets wrapped around this saw blade a couple of times. But with that ditch with weed eater string, I can do it in half as much time with this blade and not cost anything on using string. Now obviously I'd be better off cutting the ditch more often, but life is what it is sometimes. This ditch right here is one of the main reasons I would have paid a lot of money to have this blade a lot sooner in life. So I hope you find this video a lot earlier in your weed eating career than I did. These are pretty handy. Now in the last video I posted, we gained probably 20,000 views and a good 120 subscribers. I want to thank y'all for watching and subscribing. After seeing all those numbers add up so quickly over the last video, give me a lot of fuel for continuing on with making these videos. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I learned a lot on YouTube over the last few years, and I hope to return some knowledge to you. That's probably one of my main goals with it, to pay back what I've learned. Kind of a pay it forward kind of person. Now I'm enjoying making these a lot, and we're kind of jumping all over the place with different projects. Trucks, lawnmowers, weed eaters. We're kind of jumping all over the place. I hope to get into some larger long-term projects, but right now we're trying to save up our project money. And now if you have any cool attachments or anything for your weed eater, something I may not know about, be sure and let me know about it. And as always, thanks for watching. See y'all next time.